Hi, my name's Elizabeth, and I decided that I wanted to make a Draw My Life video. I've seen a lot of them on YouTube, and I thought it would be fun to make my own. I'm not a YouTube celebrity or anyone special, but I think my life's been pretty interesting. So, you'll get to see my illustrations about my life, and hopefully you find it interesting too. So, I'm 22 years old, about to be 23, and I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and you'll see my version of how my life has been so far. So my story starts with my mom, and her name is Susan, and she was born here in Baltimore, Maryland, and then she met my dad when she was like 19, and he had a big beard at the time, and he was in a motorcycle club, and they fell in love at first sight. Yeah, that's my horrible drawing of a motorcycle. Really not that good. They fell in love at first sight, and they got married on July 1st, 1983. They tried for 6 years to get pregnant, and finally they did. And they had me on August 14th, 1990. They named me Elizabeth Carroll, and I was 6 pounds, 13 ounces. So my mom, she started studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses when I was little, and my dad had already been exposed to it in the past, and later he started studying along with her, and I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. In 1993, I found out that I was going to be a big sister, and my parents, I don't think they were really trying for a baby. He was a surprise, but they did want to have another one. My mom wanted to have a boy and a girl before she was 30, and she just made it. So, on August 10th, 1993, my little brother was born. His name was William Clifford John, but we all called him Billy. And I was like, well, I like him, but when's he going back to the hospital? So it took me a little while to let that kick in. In February of 94, my parents both got baptized on the same day as Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how it works in my religion. You get baptized when you're ready to make a dedication to God, not necessarily when you're first born, or not at all when you're first born. So my mom and dad got baptized that day, and there's me and my little brother watching. And this was at our Assembly Hall in Crownsville, Maryland. So that officially made them Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's why we were raised like that. So I was born in the Halliburton Apartments in Dundalk, but when I was about 3 or 4, we moved to a townhome in Middle River. And it was like, I think it was a 2-bedroom. So when I was 1.5, I began my love affair with books that has continued to this day. I started reading when I was 1.5, and I haven't stopped since. The first book I ever read alone was Are You My Mother by Dr. Seuss, and I was soon reading chapter books. Now, some of my best childhood memories involve reading with my mom. Her and I would read all kinds of books together. We both share a love of books. We still do. And I remember a lot of memories of reading with her. We would read things like Cricket in Times Square, Little Women, The Little House in the Prairie series, and that was a lot of happy memories for me. And another series of happy memories I have are coloring with my dad. And I'm sure I colored with my mom too, but I just specifically remember coloring with my dad, and I remember him teaching me how to color in the lines, and I just remember having a coloring book and a big box of 64 Crayola crayons, coloring at the dining room table, and that was just a lot of fun. So those were happy memories, and I had a happy childhood. So then, when I was 4 in 1994, I started school. I went to Glenmore Elementary right by my house, and I was happy. I had a teacher named Miss Waxman. She was my pre-K and kindergarten teacher, and she noticed I was kind of ahead of the other kids, so she would keep me after school to do special projects with her, and I just loved to learn and loved learning. But because I was a little bit ahead of the other kids, I wasn't very popular. I mean, I wasn't hated, but I wasn't super popular either, but I was fine with that. I had a couple of good friends, throughout elementary school, but not like a ton. I was perfectly happy with it like that. And everybody said that I was really mature for my age. I was like 4 going on 40, they said. I was very, very precocious, and I would talk a lot, and I was very mischievous too, because I was just one of a kind, that's for sure. So another thing about me is when I was younger is I was always boy crazy. I never thought boys were yucky. I always had crushes all through, as early as I could remember. I always had crushes on boys. So I was never really like, ooh, boys are cuties. So that wasn't me. When I was 7, we moved from the little townhouse in Mud River to a bigger townhouse in Mud River, and it was like not very far. It was like a few streets over actually, but it was a different area, and it had a pool, and it had a big yard, and this is what I considered my childhood home. I lived there until I got married, and I did have some neighborhood friends, but my best neighborhood friend that I would say was my next door neighbor for a while, and she and I played together all the time outside. Her name was Brittany. She had red hair, and we used to play outside all the time. We would play TV tag and ride our bikes and play on our swing set, but then she moved away, and I was really sad, and after that I didn't play outside as much as I did before. Some of my best memories of that house involve our pool in the backyard. Isn't there anymore, but I used to swim all the time. I loved to swim. I would swim with my brother and my dad and a lot of different friends. Everybody wanted to swim in our pool. Some I remember is my cousins, Alex and Aaron. They lived with us for a little while, so we swam with them. Of course, Brittany that I mentioned, and our family friend Marcus. And of course, there were a lot of others. Also, Jonathan and Andrew. I'll talk more about them in a second. They would swim with us. And we just had a lot of fun in the pool. We played all kinds of games. And I was in there all the time during the summer. It's my favorite thing to do. My dad used to do this thing where he would run and jump over the side of the pool and dive in. And me and my brother were like, yeah, you're cool. And we loved it. So. Now, Jonathan and Andrew, they were my mom's best friend's kids. When we were growing up, they lived a street or two over from us. And so we spent a lot of time around them when we were little. And, well, actually all our lives. And I had a crush on Jonathan when I was like 4. And I was like obsessed with him. And Jonathan was like, hated it. So I was like, I'm going to marry you. And he was like, Mom, get her away from me. So we were always really close to that family our whole lives. And from them, we got a swing set that we had in our backyard too, and we loved that. It gave us hours of fun. It had a slide and a trapeze and rings and swings, and it was really fun. All our friends, my brother and I used to play on it, so that was great. And now, I wasn't really like other kids completely. I had some weird things I liked to do. I used to keep Dixie cups on my windowsill that I would mix concoctions in from things in the bathroom, like hair gel and peroxide and stuff, and I'd mix things together and see what could happen, and I would try to invent things. And at one point, I remember I thought I invented a permanent marker remover, so yeah, I was a little bit isolated from other kids too. But I did have some normal hobbies like playing with Barbies and playing with baby dolls, and those were I liked normal things too. I also liked to do anything creative. Of course, I already mentioned I'd love to read, but I love to do other things like painting and drawing and anything creative too. So I wasn't completely out there. I had some weird hobbies, but I like normal stuff too. So around 8 or 9 years old, I started developing more and I started gaining weight. And that was the first time in my life that I ever felt self-conscious, because I started getting teased about my appearance, and that was the first time in my life that had ever happened to me. I wasn't used to it, and so that began to really impact my self-esteem, and I started to dislike myself. That was also around the time that I started going to therapy for anxiety, and I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and put on medicine for that. But around that time, I was also fortunate enough to at least have one best friend, and she lived in the city. Her name was Toylanda. I called her Toya though. And she lived in the city, but she would come and spend every spring, summer, winter break with my family. And we were like inseparable, and she's my best friend. But then we drifted apart when we kind of were like middle school age, and we didn't really see each other for like 6 years. And then finally we saw each other, but things weren't the same, and we don't really talk now. She has 2 kids. So I did start middle school, and I went to Parkville Middle School, and it was actually a magnet school. It wasn't my home school, so most people I knew from elementary school went to Middle River Middle, but I went to Parkville, so I was a little bit alone. There was only a couple people I knew that went there with me, and so I kind of felt like a fish out of water. I was in a whole new environment. Things were completely different for me. There was a lot to get used to. So I also, one of those things was I had to start taking a school bus, and I had never done that before, and that would prove to be horrible for me different points in my life, but that's another story. So one thing I do remember is the day before middle school started, I was really scared and I couldn't sleep. And so my mom came in my room and she sat on my bed and she sang to me the lullaby that she used to sing when I was a baby, which is the Riddle song. And she rubbed my back and sang to me until I fell asleep. And that's just a really special memory, and it's also still a very special song to me. So that was a special time. And just a side note, my dad and I used to be really close when I was little. I was a big daddy's girl, and I would always run and hug him when he came home. And then when I got older, it wasn't the same, and I still get sad about it when I think that, but my dad and I are close now, and I never stopped loving him. Things got different, and it makes me really sad, but I never, I think it just happens normally. But on the other hand, my mom and we used to fight all the time when I was a teenager, constantly yell at each other and scream and fight. But then when I got older, around 17 or 18, we started to get closer and stop fighting so much. And now I consider her to be one of my best friends. So back to middle school. I started to get teased a lot, of course. And there was a lot of people that just teased me all the time in middle school, and it was pretty much horrible. And I wasn't really sure who I was, and I started to dislike myself, and I was pretty obnoxious, and I just like to block that whole period of my life out most of the time. But I was fortunate enough to make some friends, especially around 7th grade. And I made a few friends that stuck with me for some reason all through middle school. And I was pretty obnoxious, so I really don't know why they were my friends, but I guess we all were a little awkward in middle school. So even though I didn't have a whole lot of friends and I was still mercilessly teased, I had my little group and I was happy with that. And like I said, I can't stand who I was in middle school, so I don't know why they were my friends, but they were. Another thing I had to get used to in middle school was I was no longer smart. Well, I didn't think I was smart anyway. I was starting to get average grades, and I was used to getting the best grades, being the best, the smartest kid in school, and getting A pluses and winning awards. And now I was just getting C's, and I was just average, and that was hard for me. It made me feel really stupid and dumb. And I felt that everyone else was smarter than me. It seemed like everybody was getting A's and B's, and I was just average. I wasn't used to that feeling. Then in 7th grade, September 20th, I was participating in a bus evacuation drill. With those of you who aren't familiar, you practice jumping out of the bus in case of emergencies. And I did what I was supposed to do, and I fell. And I ended up breaking my ankle. And that was really embarrassing. I got teased a lot. It hurt, but it hurt more to my pride. People would make all kinds of rude comments to me when I was getting wheeled down to the nurse's office in a wheelchair. She's probably jumping after a donut is one I specifically remember, so that kind of hurt my feelings. And so I spent the next month in a cast. It's the only bone I've ever broken, that I actually needed a cast for, besides like toes and fingers and stuff. And so I had a hot pink cast for about a month. Now, the magnet program that I was in middle school involved 4 different magnets. There was mass communications, engineering, environmental science, and visual and graphic arts. And what you did was you took all 4 in 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, you narrowed it down to 2, and 8th grade, you narrowed it down to 1. Mass communications was like video and television. Engineering was, of course, like building and bridges and whatnot. Visual and graphic arts is self-explanatory, and environmental science kind of is too. You study animals and fish and the environment. So I took all 4. I hated mass communications. Engineering wasn't for me, so I chose visual and graphic arts and environmental science 7th grade, and I chose visual and graphic arts in 8th grade. I took that all year long. I also started Spanish in 7th grade, and I really enjoyed it. I kept going with it all the way through high school pretty much. And I also played the flute, which I started in 5th grade. I didn't really enjoy it. I kind of sucked at it, so I dropped it after 7th grade. Now, like I mentioned, I got teased a lot, but there was one girl in particular that saw it her personal mission to make my life a living hell. And she was very chubby like me. She had an ugly little horse face, and her name was Emily, but for some reason she was popular, unlike me. I see now, I think it was because she had confidence, even though she had too much confidence and I didn't have any. So she spread all kinds of rumors about me, made my life hell all through high school. Her little followers were all after her, and I pretty much can't stand her. She's still the same way. But I also, in middle school, I started to take refuge in my writing. I started to really enjoy writing. I wrote poetry, and I started keeping journals, and so that was kind of an escape for me. In age 9, I had a poem published in an anthology, and from then on, I enjoyed writing poetry. And since I had made my friends in middle school, right when I started to kind of come in myself a little bit more and be kind of happy, it was time to leave middle school. So we were all kind of going to different schools, and it was upsetting having to leave all my friends behind that I had made. I applied to 3 different magnet high schools: Eastern Technical for culinary arts, Carver for writing, and Patapsco for visual arts. I ended up getting into Eastern. I missed Carver by a half a point, and I did get into Patapsco, so that was the one that I chose to go in. So I ended up majoring in visual arts. So I left middle school without much fanfare. I didn't really get any awards or anything, which I wasn't really used to, but I just kind of left and I was done. Just got average grades, whatever. Was done with middle school. And then I started high school, Patapsco High School and Center for the Arts. And I pretty much began my high school career just protecting myself by being very introverted. I kind of just hid myself in my writing and my reading, and I just figured that was how I was going to protect myself, just by being alone, keeping to myself. Since it was an art school, there were other kids that were weird just like me, people from all different walks of life, and so I wasn't the only one that was weird, but it was also a homeschool. People from that area were able to go there, and so that didn't stop me from getting teased. I got teased plenty, and so did the other kids. So, but it was not nearly as bad as middle school. In my first couple years of high school, I made a friend, and she was an upperclassman, and her name was Katie, and she was 2 years ahead of me though, so she graduated and moved on, and I was alone again. So, while she was a good friend, she kind of left. So in 9th grade, you have to take Foundations of Art, which is pretty much a sampling of all the different majors that you can do: drawing, painting, graphic arts, photography, sculpture, those types of things. You have to take all of them before you can focus on what you really want, which I knew for me was photography, maybe a little graphic art, and maybe some sculpture. So I started feeling like everyone else was so much better than me. I would compare myself to others and feel like I pretty much sucked at art once I started Foundations. Then in 10th grade, we were still had to take one class, drawing and painting. We were required to take, and we had to do oil paints, and I hated oil paints. I still hate oil paint. Just such a mess to clean up, and I just can't stand it. One day, somehow the palette fell on my head and got all over me and all over my clothes and in my hair, and it was horrible, and it was very embarrassing, and everybody was laughing at me, and teacher had to help me clean up, and it was just horrible. And I was just really upset and embarrassed, and I just made me hate that class that much more. And in my personal life during this time, I was going through a really tough time too. I was dealing with a lot of things. I had made some stupid mistakes and suffering the consequences for them. I just felt like I was kind of in a dark hole for that whole portion of my life around age 15, 16. I kept it all in my journals and tried to work through it, but it was really, really difficult. I was really in a period of self-discovery, figuring out who in the world I was and who I was going to be. So while painful, it was very necessary. Now, I had some friends, but I was still pretty much like an outcast. I was very introverted, and I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and I wasn't really that happy. In fact, I remember many times eating my lunch in the school bathroom, in a bathroom stall, to avoid having to be in the cafeteria sitting alone or having to try to find a seat without knowing anybody or without sitting with anybody. So that was what I would do. I felt safer being by myself and in the bathroom eating. This was also around the time, 9th, 10th grade, when I discovered the sanctuary that was my school library. And I spent so much time in there, 9th grade especially, but 10th grade too. Read pretty much like every book I could. I read so many books, 9th grade. I pretty much kept to myself, and that was my saving grace, the library. I would go on the computer, or I would just read books, check out all kinds of books, and it was like heaven. I was so happy. I felt safe there. It was just wonderful. And like I said, I spent all my free time there. I would stay there after school, and whenever I could, I would just be in the library. I felt like that was my haven. It was also around this time in my life that I discovered social networking, aka MySpace at the time. It was MySpace, not Facebook. And I spent a lot of time on there, joined up when I was like 15, so. How could I forget? I spent about 8 years obsessed, infatuated with this boy. And I had the hugest crush on him, and I was just like obsessed with him. And we will call him Steve. But I was like obsessed with him, and it was my first unrequited love. He was more interested in like thin, pretty girls, including one of my best frenemies. And I was like the go-between, and that was like torture. But he led to a lot of poetry and daydreaming and craziness. Also, if I go back to Jonathan, around that time it was miserable because he decided he wanted to get married to this girl, Rachel, and I hated it. I was very upset. I knew that she was all wrong for him. I didn't think he was ever going to get married, and I was upset that it would like change everything. It turned out that it was ended really badly. She cheated on him and got pregnant. It was pretty ugly. I also had a few short jobs in high school, food service jobs that I hated, and less than a month after I was there, I quit. I just couldn't deal with it, but that led to a lot of depression too. I felt like I was worthless because I couldn't hold a job. I started in 10th, 11th grade, I can't remember which, I think 11th, doing child development, and that was like, there was like a preschool at my school. We took care of little kids and learned about child development, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed it, and I also made some friends in that class and of the other classes associated with it, and that's when things started to turn up for me a little bit. I still got teased plenty, but at least now I had some support. And it was nice that I had some friends now. So I was starting to get a little happier in high school. And I was enjoying my classes like forensics and child development. That's when I was also started, senior year was the best. Senior year was when I was able to focus mostly on my photography. And that was when I met my best friend, Amber. And she's much prettier than that, but I can't draw people very well, at least quickly, and I don't have a blonde or a yellow marker for her blonde hair. But we became best friends, hit it off right away. I also had a lot of other friends in senior year that I was close with. The first year in high school that I was actually pretty happy and really enjoying myself. So, me and Amber are still really good friends. And so then I finally graduated, and I graduated on June 3rd, 2008, and it was like the proudest moment of my life thus far. I was the top 11% of my class. I had several honors, Cords, National English Honor Society, Art Honor Society, and also my 90-hour childcare certificate. Now, I decided that I did not want to go to college right away. I figured I would wait. I was like done with school. I was like burned out. I was like, no more school. I didn't feel like doing more school. So I was like, I'll wait a while. And pretty much what I ended up doing for like the year after I graduated was sleeping and a Bible study. I threw myself into my Bible studies and my ministry work and computer. Those were the three main things that I was doing during that time in my life. But there was a really enriching experience that I had that year right after I graduated. I now had free time, and so they asked, there was an old woman in our congregation who I had known most of my life but never really got to know very well, and she was in really poor health, and she needed someone to sit with her during the day and help take care of her. And I really didn't want to do it at first. I was thinking it was going to be really awkward, but I'm so glad I did. She was one of the most wonderful people I ever got to know. She was so amazing. There were difficult parts though, because she was really sad, and she would cry a lot, because she didn't get to see her husband, and he was in the hospital, and she didn't get to do what she used to do. But she would also tell me some really great stories about when she was a kid, and we would watch The Price is Right and Food Network and just have a lot of fun. So I stayed over her house the night before she had to go away to the hospital, and the night before she was like, "Let's run away. Let's not go," and it was really sad. And then the morning of, she said, "I'm not coming home, am I?" And it just really broke my heart, because she didn't. She ended up passing away in the hospital, and it was really, really hard for me. It was the only person that I was really close to that thus far in my life that had really passed away. I was young when my grandparents died, and so it was really, really hard for me. I cried a lot. So that was difficult, but I was so glad I got to know her before she died. On September 6th, 2008, I met a guy online who was also a Jehovah's Witness, and his name was Jason, and we started talking and decided we wanted to date virtually, because he lived in England. And so we talked on webcam and instant messenger and all those types of things. And long story short, I'll save you 8 months of summarizing. He was toxic, and he pretty much led me on and string me along, and we dated on his terms for 8 months, and he was basically just crazy, and I don't really want to talk much more about it. During that time, I also worked at a daycare for a short time. I liked the work a lot, I loved the kids, but I didn't like the circumstances, the people I worked with, the circumstances, so I ended up quitting after a month. Another depressing stint where I felt like I was worthless because I didn't have a job. So I instead threw myself into my Bible studies again and started getting really serious about them and my ministry work, going door to door, doing the ministry, and just working on my spirituality. And then in April 2009, I met a boy who would, again, cause me infatuation, and so we talked on the phone a lot, and we would spend like 5+ hours on the phone every single day, and we hit it off really quickly, and we were talking about things like marriage and kids and just everything. We just were really serious. It was kind of also a whirlwind thing, but he even told me he loved me, and he told me he couldn't wait to put a ring on my finger. Exactly his words. So it was I really thought I was in love with him. But then in September of that year, he decided that he thought we'd be better off as friends, and I think he was just really afraid of commitment completely, but he told me he didn't think I was the one for him. So I just cried and cried and cried. It was horrible. And pretty much broke my heart, and I spent forever thinking about it. In fact, I spent the next almost close to a year analyzing what happened, what went wrong, because it was very quick, and come to the conclusion that he wasn't ready for a commitment and he couldn't handle it. But I just spent forever going over it and over it in my mind, what went wrong, what happened. And the worst part was we were still friends. He would still talk to me a lot, and that was just really hard. So it was hard to see him and talk to him after he broke my heart. And I didn't want to let him know how much he hurt me. So it just went on like that for months. And we're still friends, but to this day, he denies that he ever liked me as much as he did. But that's okay, because everyone else knows the truth. Now go back to Jonathan. We had pretty much become like really, really good friends. We talked on the phone all the time. And he told me that he had a job opportunity for me. And I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So in February of 2010, I started a job as an administrative assistant in Towson. And I loved it. I was very happy. And it was the first time I had ever been really happy with the job. And I was very happy because I liked it and I was able to keep it. And that kept me from feeling as worthless as I had been feeling because I couldn't hold a job. And in November of 2009, just going back a little bit, I got baptized at the same assembly hall area, but it was a new hall built on that site where my parents got baptized. And that was when I chose to dedicate my life to God and got baptized. So that was a very important day in my life. Now, like I mentioned, Jonathan and I had become really good friends. And we were practically best friends. We hung out every weekend with groups of people, groups of friends. And I had, around the beginning of 2010, felt like around March, that I really had feelings for him, deeper than I thought. But one night on the phone, he told me that all we could ever be is friends. I didn't tell him how I felt, but we were just talking about basic stuff. And I acted like I was fine with that. I was like, yeah, of course, but inside I was like, I'm so tired of being heartbroken. And I cried when I got off the phone, and it was really hard. But I was like, fine, I didn't want to ruin our friendship. So we stayed friends. And around later on that year, we started planning a trip to Florida. Him and I and a bunch of our friends decided we were going to take a trip to Florida. And I was really excited because I'd never been on a vacation. I'd never been to Florida, and I'd never been on a vacation without my family, and I'd never been on a vacation for a whole week before. So I was just really excited in general. And we planned it for June, and we were just so excited. And so off we went to Florida, and Jonathan and his mom and I went on the train, and the other people in our party either flew or drove. And so we went on the train, and Jonathan and I stayed up till the wee hours of the morning in the dining car, just talking and looking at things and just basically talking really late. And we just stayed up talking for hours and hours and hours, and until the sun came up, and then we went to sleep. And I was just like thinking how much I loved him, but he didn't know, and I was kind of upset, but I liked being friends. So we slept next to each other in the sleeper car. Well, they're just your seats, but you recline them and you sleep there. We were sitting next to each other, so we slept next to each other. And I woke up next to him, and I, as corny as this sounds, just like felt this feeling of contentment and just happiness waking up next to him. And I just really liked it. So when we got to Florida, we were pretty much inseparable the whole trip. We spent all of our time, we were with everyone else too, but we kind of just stuck together and did stuff together. And we stayed up really late in the condo living room just talking to each other until early in the morning. And he tried to teach me how to play pool, which was a miserable failure. But we did a lot of things. We were just like together the whole time. and had a lot of fun doing everything together. And we swam and we went to the beach and we just had a good time. And I could kind of sense that something had changed on the train, but I didn't know. And so then around the second day of the trip, he told me that he had something to tell me, but it would have to wait till the end of the trip. And I was like, what? So finally I got it out of him one night while we stayed up really late, and he told me that he didn't want to ruin our friendship. So he didn't tell me, but he had feelings for me too. So we talked all night and decided that we were going to give it a try. And so we started dating June 14th, 2010 in Kissimmee, Florida. And we announced it to everyone the next morning, and I actually stayed up really late so I could really early actually, so I could text my brother and tell him, because I knew he had to get up early for school, and everybody was really happy mostly. Some people weren't, but we got all kinds of mixed reactions. But we were happy, and that's all that mattered. I was so excited. It was like euphoric for me. So then on the way home on the train, we were on cloud nine. We were both so happy, and we talked about things like marriage and kids and our wedding, and that might seem a bit fast, but you have to remember, we knew each other for 17 years, and we were already best friends. We already knew everything about each other. We pretty much knew we were going to be together forever. So we were talking about all of that stuff on the train, and that's also where we had our first ever kiss. And our first official date, we went out together as a couple, once we got home from Florida, was Toy Story 3, the movies. So then we got home and I tried on wedding dresses and all that stuff. But then officially on November 27th, 2010, he officially proposed, and he gave me a teddy bear holding a little velvet box with the ring inside. And all my friends and family were there, most of them, and his mom videotaped it, and I was completely surprised and shocked, and I looked horrible, but I said yes, of course. So that was great. And then the wedding planning I've been doing since I was 12 years old could finally begin officially. So I started planning our wedding. Then in April of 2011, we'd already been having a hard time. He had to quit his job, and he just had gotten a new one in April. And then his car went up. I really suck at drawing vehicles of any kind, but we called it the Tortoise. It was a Ford Taurus, and the transmission went up, so we had to get a new car, and we bought our first car together, Hyundai Accent, that we named Bianca because she's white and she's a good car. So then came our wedding day finally, and that was 9/10/11, September 10th, 2011, and that is when we got married. And there's my big fancy wedding dress that looks like a marshmallow in it, but I loved it. And we got married at 2 p.m. at our Kingdom Hall in Essex, and in front of 150, I believe, of our closest friends and family, and many people we wanted to invite, but we couldn't because we didn't have enough money. But we got married. It was at 2 p.m. Then we had a reception at the American Legion Hall in Parkville, and everything went pretty well. There were a lot of things I would change if I could go back, but that's everything. But it was a great day, and it all went pretty well. And the most important part was we were now husband and wife, and it was wonderful. And we each had 6 people standing by our side on our wedding party. I had 5 girls, and then of course my flower girl, and he had 5 guys, and our ring bearer, which was our amazing nephew Quentin, who at the time was only not even 2, and he managed to do an amazing job, and he carried the rings down the aisle in a stuffed bear. So that was our wedding day, and then we went on our honeymoon to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I'm laughing because it was crazy. Everything that could go wrong would go wrong. We had a parking ticket on the boardwalk. I was sick, he was sick. We had bad weather, it was freezing. There was a speeding ticket by a state trooper on the way home. It would qualify as a horrible vacation, but we were so in love and happy that we had fun. Now, so far, our marriage has been a roller coaster ride of a lot of ups and downs. We've gotten through a lot of obstacles together so far, and we know it's going to continue to be a roller coaster ride. We've had a lot of crazy things happen, especially the first month of our marriage. It was crazy. I was really, really, really sick from the honeymoon on, and of course we had arguments and fights like every couple does, and we had a lot of money problems, and we have mental illnesses, both of us do, and physical illnesses, and just crazy things happen to us. Family troubles, money troubles, everything. But then we've had our high points, of course. We've had surprises. We've had love. That's the most important thing. We've had support from our friends and family. We get closer every day, and it's truly a blessing to be married to my best friend. So we know it'll continue to be that roller coaster ride into forever. Now, since I got married, well, actually before that, in the past 3 years, my anxiety's gotten really bad. I have social anxiety now, in addition to my general anxiety disorder, and it's gotten to the point where I have panic attacks a lot. I can start crying at anywhere I'm around a lot of people, baseball games, my meetings for like church, so trouble breathing and stomach pains and everything, so that's gotten really bad. But also, around the end of last year, my work got cut back really far, so I had to start going for a new job. I put out 80 plus applications and got nothing. No calls, hardly at all, nothing. I started to notice that a lot of the jobs need degrees, a lot of the jobs that I wanted to do, but I didn't think I could ever go back to school because I didn't have the money. And then finally, I talked to a company called Education Connection, and they told me that they could work it out for me and I'd be able to go back to school at no cost to me right now. I could get FAFSA and student loans. So I talked to Jonathan about it, and he said he'd support me. So I was able to go back to school doing online courses to be a medical transcriptionist, which I've always kind of wanted to do. Not because I love medical or anything, but because I know that's where the jobs are, and that's all I really want to do is support my family. So I started Kaplan University in August of 2012, and it's been great so far. It's starting to get harder. Now, I recently started, about 3 months ago, being a nanny to 2 wonderful little boys, Brian and Bryson, and I love them to pieces. And that's helped me too, because now I have a full-time job while I'm doing my schooling. I also still do work for my administrative job. Something that I struggle with all the time is I really, really want a baby. I wanted a child ever since I can remember. And now that I'm married, the desire is a lot stronger. We really want to start a family. Unfortunately, we can't right now. My health is too bad, and it causes me a lot of pain and frustration, and my husband's very supportive, and he really wants a child too. It's going to take a couple years, though, to resolve all my health problems. I have PCOS and insulin resistance and thyroidism, hypothyroidism, so it's going to take a long time, but we're trying to be patient. For now, we settle for spoiling our cat, Muffin, and also our nephew, Quentin, who is 3.5, and we love him to pieces, even though we don't get to see him as much as we used to, because I work full-time now, and so does my husband, but we spoil both of them instead of our child that we're gonna hopefully have soon. And we're hoping that in the next year or so, we can buy a house of our own. We really want to have a house, so we're working on that, and we're hoping that in the near future we can move out of our apartment and move into a home of our very own. So that's our life so far. That's how my life's been. To be continued. And I wouldn't be anything without all my family and friends, and I appreciate all of their help and support.